would be a better place with no racial disparities. The world would be a better place with no racial disparities. Wow. So pick someone there and have them steel man it, or yourself.
We'll send him.
Okay. Your job is to strongly disagree, present the best argument you can as a debater at Incubate Debate for why the world would not be a better place with no racial disparities.
Okay. All right, let's do it. Okay, so I would say, if I were to do this, which I don't, I would say that racial disparities should still exist because it would result in the preservation of diverse and unique cultures. Within human nature, different cultures exist, and racial disparities, culture is a part of that. Therefore, between races, in which many cultures may identify with their race, we can preserve that because that can be defined as a racial disparity.
Anybody want to comment on that or attempt to rebut or refute?
So why would that make the world a better place? You're just saying by making people poor, we're making the world a better place because it promotes culture. There's other ways to promote culture. There's food, how cities are built, what people like to do during the day, celebrations, family holidays, like that also contributes to culture. You can't just say that this one defining feature defines an entire culture. Just because I'm Mexican doesn't mean that all of my uncles work in construction and are disproportionately affected by, being poor because they work in construction. That doesn't mean that that's what makes me Mexican. What makes me Mexican is my family, my heritage, and what we do over the holidays. It doesn't mean that just because we might be disproportionately affected by the system, that makes us Mexican.
I'm going to give you a quick rebuttal.
I agree with you. Yes, we should not be disproportionately affected. It just simply asks about racial disparities. I would say racial disparities can exist within cultures. I am German. I do not identify with Mexican culture. That is because that is a racial disparity. I am German. You are Mexican. That is a difference. I am not talking about systemic racism. I'm not saying we should oppress people because it helps culture. That is not what I said.
Okay, everybody go back to the neutral. Next claim. A purely meritocratic society will inevitably produce disparities. Look at me. A purely meritocratic society will inevitably produce disparities. Wow. All right. Okay. Erase and write your best reason for believing that.
The best reason Marley probably has is to say that in a purely meritocratic society, it'll be based entirely on merit and not on race. Thus, there will be no racial disparities because everything will be based on merit and not on race.
Is that your reason?
She is quite accurate, yeah.
Really? All right, turn it around and show her and read it if you don't mind.
Meritocracy does not include disparities, racial disparities in system. CLT states that basically means if we have enough people, central limit theorem states we will have a normal distribution, i.e. no disparity between different racial and ethnic groups.
In a single sentence, what is CLT?
Central limit theorem, with a very large amount of people in a population, there will be similarities between groups and their distribution.
Okay, guess her best reason for believing that.
I would say that she agrees that a meritocratic society would produce disparities because she would say that it's just kind of up to chance.
Is that your best reason?
Slightly. I would say that in a purely meritocratic...
Wait, yes or no?
No.
What is your best reason for standing on the strongly agree?
My best reason is that people are inherently racist, thus they're going to have their own inherent biases. So he is kind of right that it is up to chance, but I'm saying that it's up to human nature more like that there are going to be racial disparities.
Okay. Did you understand their arguments?
Yes.
Did you understand their arguments?
Yes.
Did anything that she said persuade you to move one mat to the left?
Sort of, that we all have inherent bias and inherent racial bias.
So if the answer is yes, you can move. Is there anything she said that convinced you to move one mat to the left?
Well, I already moved, so I guess so.
You can move again if you want. It's a free state. Okay. And now I'm going to come back to you again. Is there anything that he said that can convince you to move back?
That a little bit, that in an equal society, everybody would start off on the same footing and everyone would be on kind of the same footing with merit. And so we wouldn't have as much discrimination and people would kind of be, I don't know, there'd be more equality.
Is that a sufficient reason to justify you moving to slightly agree?
I don't think so. I think personal bias is too big of a reason.
Okay. Is there anything that he said that convinced you to move one mat to the right to slightly disagree?
No.
Okay, put down your boards and everybody go back to the neutral. Systemic racism requires discriminatory laws. Systemic racism requires discriminatory laws. Racial quotas for college admissions is immoral. Move. Okay. Okay. What caused you to move?
I thought about it a little bit more, and I think that racial quotas are in some way, although immoral, still an okay solution that doesn't address the full problem, but it still does kind of address the general trends the problem creates.
Okay, everybody go back to the neutral, please. Humans are born with basically a blank slate. Move. Yeah. Okay, everybody go back to the neutral, please. Same question we started with, and now we're going to put a little twist on it. College DEI programs should be abolished. Move. Weren't you over there before? No, it's good, it's good, it's good. So you moved. What caused you to move to strongly disagree?
Because Maverick, he presented a really good argument, and initially I was a little iffy on the side that I was on. I do believe that there are issues in DII programs, but on the most part, I feel like their intentions are good and reform is definitely needed. But students, especially in college, when they're starting to develop their own thoughts and their own ideas, need to have a community, and I feel like DEI does provide that. Okay.
Are you on the same mat?
I moved from slightly disagree to disagree.
What caused you to move?
I do genuinely understand, like, Ms. Reyes's point. There are a lot of ways that you would want to say, like, yeah, it's racist, it's bad, you don't want it. But the more I discussed it and the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I actually do think it's an okay solution to the problem.
Because of something someone said, or why? Like, what was the causally responsible for the move?
Honestly, I feel like it was kind of what Ms. Reyes said about natural human biases, right? It is in human nature sometimes to discriminate against someone else. We should take action to try and make sure that that is not the case and that is not what reflects in a meritocratic society.
Okay. Were you on the agree mat?
I was on the strongly agree mat.
So you moved to the agree. Why?
Because I understand DEI programs were intended for good and are intended for good, and I think that a lot of them involve overcoming adversity among minorities, and I think that's an important thing for colleges to consider in admission.
Okay, and were you on the strongly agree mat?
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to ask everybody this question as a final question. What would cause you to move? What evidence or reason would you have to hear to move you to the agree?
So I was very close to actually moving to the agree when I heard, I believe, the point from him saying that depending on someone's race, they may be economically disadvantaged. But then I remembered that DEI is not affirmative action. Once everyone gets into college, they all start on the same place. And saying that someone needs a boost because of their race is saying that they cannot get there on their own merit. Because once everyone gets into college, because DEI will not help them get into college, that was already abolished. Once everyone's there, they get a clean slate, they're starting from the same place, and saying that because you're of a certain race, you can't get there on your own is inherently racist and is going to create a divide between the people of America.
Okay, so but what would cause you to move, unless you said it and I didn't catch it? Nothing at all?
No, unfortunately.
Okay, so let's say that I asked her that question, what would cause you to move to the disagree, and she said nothing at all. What would you say to her?
I would say that we need to look at the facts. We need to distinguish from affirmative action and DEI and see if it's really if we are really a just society if we let DEI continue in college campuses.
Okay, what would cause you to move to the strongly agree?
if there was more evidence showing that people specifically were directly being discriminated against, as far to showing that people of a majority race, ethnicity were being completely and directly discriminated against, and it was seriously putting them at a disadvantage.
And what would cause you to move to the slightly agree?
If there was evidence showing that minorities were seriously societally disadvantaged.
Okay. What would cause you to move to the strongly disagree?
Strongly disagree. I believe what would cause me to move even further in that direction would be some level of proof that there is actual, genuine, active anti-minority discrimination within the United States. I feel like obviously then it would be a no-brainer to say that we need to counteract that. Like, currently the argument is that there isn't really active discrimination against minorities and that it's more or less a systemic issue, right? If somebody were to prove that it is not rooted in systemic issues, right? That it really is just racism, like active hatred of minorities that was causing these disparities, then of course I'd move over there, because then it'd just be a matter of fighting against people who are actively discriminating.
And what would cause you to move to the slightly disagree?
I believe if somebody were to prove to me, give me better information that America truly is meritocratic. If somebody were to give me information that proved against systemic racism, that proved different faults within the causes of systemic racism that I believe in, I would move all the way to strongly agree.
Okay. And what would cause you to move to the disagree?
What would cause me to move to the disagree is just more substantial evidence, more widespread across America on how DEI actually impacts students and the sentiment of students on campus. So not
Yeah, how, when you say how, like what do you mean how?
like climate, like campus climate, like how students are feeling on campus. And I don't want it to be like just one school. I want it to say across America or across a certain state at least that students are feeling that these DEI programs are hurting them.
Okay, cool. Give them a round of applause. Thank you. Good job. Good job.